Hello, my name is Judge Elliot Howsie, and I am originally from Wilkinsburg, where I grew up. And my father and my mother are hail from South Carolina and Georgia, Milledgeville, Georgia. And they migrated to Pittsburgh a number of years ago. It was approximately in the early 60s. They came to Pittsburgh, as most people did from the South, looking for jobs. And they came here and they started a family. And I am the youngest child of five. I have five sisters. I'm sorry, I have five sisters, and I'm the only boy. So there's a total of six kids, but I was the only boy, and I happen to be the youngest. My father was a janitor, and he worked two full-time jobs to provide me with an opportunity to attend Central Catholic High School. And I attended that school, and I loved every minute of it. It was such a great opportunity for me. It was transformative, just the experience and the education that it provided me with. It really did change my life. As a result of attending Central Catholic High School, I was able to apply to Indiana University of Pennsylvania, where I enrolled and obtained my bachelor's degree as well as my master's degree in criminology. I am currently the father of two boys, Elliot Howsie III, who is also enrolled at Central Catholic, and he is a junior. And my youngest son is Evan Howsie, who is a freshman in Central Catholic. And he is on the crew team. He loves rowing, and he's very passionate about it. They're both fine young men. They're growing up to be very mature, responsible young men. I'm very proud of the progress that they're making. But I'm also married, and my wife's name is Melissa Arnold, and we've been married for 3 years. And so that's going really well. Life is good. I'm just doing the best I can to provide for my family and to be the father and to also be an example of what I like my children to continue to strive to become. With that being said, I am currently running to retain my seat on the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas, and that's why I'm running in this upcoming judicial race. During my legal career, I've worked in the criminal justice system, and I've fully understand the generational impact that our judges' decisions have upon the lives of the and the families that appear in our court system. And so, when you think about the fact that I grew up in a low-income community, I understand the consequences associated with the judge's decision. So, when you think about the generational impact, that's one reason. When you think about the racial disparity that exists in our criminal justice system, at every decision point in the criminal justice system, there's a racial disparity, and that is something that needs to be addressed. And last but not least, when you talk about diversity, of 44 judges on the Court of Common Pleas, there are only four African American judges. I happen to be the only African American judge in the entire criminal division. So when we talk about the racial disparity in the number of people of color who come through the front door of the court system and grace the steps of our court system, there's so many things that we need to change. It's definitely an opportunity for us to continue the work of reforming our courts, and I want to play a role in that, and I want to be a part of the solution in creating equal access to the court and ensuring that the process is fair and is equitable and it's just. So I believe that I have a life experience to run to keep my seat in the Court of Common Pleas. When you talk about growing up in a low income community, understanding the issues that plague those communities, understanding the decisions and the impact of those decisions, but additionally, I worked in the social service field. Through the entire time I was attending law school, I was working with families who were court involved, families who were having issues with drug and alcohol addiction, mental health issues, homelessness issues, and those issues were the things that routinely bring poor people to the front door of the court step. So my experience in the social service field, as well as my work history. I worked previously as a prosecutor, prosecuting child abuse cases, but I've also worked as a defense attorney, representing people accused of crimes, representing people in family court matters, and representing people in personal injury matters. But I've also worked as the first African American in the history of our county to serve as the director of the public defender's office. So I understand the court system and I understand the issues that are routinely resulting in people becoming involved in our court system. But it's also because of my perspective. I understand that the decisions that we make can be extremely impactful as judges. And we have to change the way that we're dealing with things like homelessness and the way that we address drug and alcohol addiction and mental health issues, because all it does is tends to destroy lives. And we don't always fashion sentences and a response from the court system that allows people to put their lives back together after paying their debt to society and move on and lessen the likelihood that they'll return to the front steps of the court system. So during my time as a judge in the family division, the one thing that I've become aware of is that, people show up in the court system and they really don't have the resources that it takes to litigate their matters, whether it's custody or whether it's an issue related to a divorce. It routinely costs about $20,000 in litigation expenses to litigate a divorce. And so when you think about that expense, and you think about the fact that most people who end up in court are from low income communities, people don't have the resources to pursue their legal claims. And so when you think about alimony, and you think about dividing pensions and dividing assets, in some instances, people are actually too poor to even get divorced. And so in that space, the people who tend to suffer are the children, because then those parties don't have the resources to really litigate their custody issues. And so we need to have judges in that space who understand that a lot of times the litigants will be pro se. They will not have an attorney. We need to make sure that judges are patient, judges are understanding, and they go above and beyond to ensure that that process is fair and accessible for all litigants, but especially those litigants who are unable to afford an attorney. But when you think about the criminal division, there's actually a racial disparity at every decision point in our court system. From the start to the end, there's a racial disparity. And although we do a lot of things fairly well in our criminal justice system, there's so many things that we need to look at improving. When you look at the fact that jail should be reserved for the worst of the worst, although we've had a 35% reduction in violent crimes, we've had a 46% reduction in property crimes, but yet our jail population is up 62%. If you think about our jail population, 19% of the people in our jail are there because of a felony as a crime of violence as their lead charge. So if you think about our jail population, excuse me, and the number of people who are currently in our jails should be reserved for the worst of the worst. But now what we have is a situation where people are there for probation violations. People are there for low-level misdemeanors. 50% of our jail population consists of people that are there because of technical violations of probation or nonviolent offenses. So we really need to change the way we use incarceration. We need to change the way in which bail is imposed. Conditions of bail are imposed. We should never have a monetary condition of bail, because it does nothing more than ensure that poor people sit in jail and people that have the financial means to post bond get out. It doesn't make our communities any safer. It doesn't ensure or increase the likelihood that someone will return to court on a scheduled hearing. It does nothing more than penalize people for being poor. So there's so many things in our court system that we need to take a look at. And it kind of continues this narrative that people from low income communities believe that the process will not be fair, the process is not accessible. And so when we talk about judges have an obligation to take a look at the way in which we're doing business, and to understand that we have an obligation to further ensure that the process is fair, that it's accessible to everyone, and to address the racial disparities, to address the issues that have such long generational impacts that tend to destroy lives, and it doesn't necessarily give people the tools and the resources to land on their feet. When you think about our response to drugs, we are not always giving people the treatment and the resources that they need to get back on their feet and pay their debt to society and move on. In most instances in Allegheny County, we give out extremely long periods of probation. And the consequence associated with that decision is that people who are on lengthy periods of probation are more likely to end up in a jail cell at some point in the process for a violation of that probation. And so that tends to destroy lives, but it also wastes taxpayer dollars in light of the fact that we spend $103 per day per person to sit in the jail. In 2000, our jail budget was approximately $20 million. Now it is well over $100 million. And that is because of the way in which our judges are imposing sentences, the way in which we're dealing with bail, the way in which we're dealing with probation violations. There are just so many opportunities to improve upon the work that's being done in our court system. And I believe that as judges, we have an obligation to take a look at that and continue the work of reforming our court system. So, because of my experience working in the social service field, working with the families who were court involved, who were struggling with varying degrees of dysfunction, whether it be mental health issues, homelessness issues, or drug and alcohol addiction, I understand the issues that typically result in people becoming involved in the court system. I also was employed as a prosecutor, so I prosecuted cases involving child abuse, but I've served as well as a defense attorney, and I had the responsibility of protecting people's rights, defending people that are accused of committing crimes. I've worked in the family division, representing people in child support matters, custody matters, divorce proceedings, and I've also represented people in protection from abuse matters. But more recently, I was the director of the Public Defender's Office. And in that role, there were so many things that we did, so many initiatives in that office that we undertook to improve the quality of the representation for the people that we represent. And one of the things that I became keenly aware of during my time as a director is that people who did not have the monetary resources to post bail routinely would have to sit in jail for a period of 8 months. And then during that time, they would lose their jobs, their houses, their cars. And so it was very destructive, because in most of those instances, those people would, their cases would be resolved with a sentence of probation. So if you think about that, there were people who were sitting in jail, and it still occurs to this day. People are sitting in jail due to their inability to post a monetary condition of bail, in some instances as low as $500. People are sitting in jail, and they plead guilty just so they can get out of jail. So one of the things that we did in that office that was so impactful was that we began to, we hired attorneys to represent people at bail hearings, but we also hired social workers. And the combination of the social workers and the attorneys enabled us to begin to address issues related to drug addiction, issues related to mental health counseling. And by getting those litigants tied into those services sooner in the process, it did two things. It increased the likelihood that they would be released from jail so that they could deal with their matters while still maintaining their employment, maintaining their housing. But it also increased the likelihood for a favorable outcome in the case earlier in the proceedings. So I understand the importance of social services being involved in legal representation. But the work I'm doing currently as a judge is just a continuation of that work. There was a situation where a gentleman had been arrested as a client of the Public Defender's Office. He had been arrested and charged with a crime, low-level misdemeanors. And although he worked, had gainful employment, he had been in minimal trouble throughout his life, but he didn't have the $500 bail that he was required to post in order to get out of jail. Due to his inability to post that bail, he sat in jail for a period of eight months. And during that time, as I said, he lost his job, his house, his car. And although the charges were ultimately dismissed by the prosecutor, he was, told he was free to go. And the response he gave was, go where? Because he had lost everything while he sat in jail for 8 months, all due to his inability to pay a $500 bail. So when you think about the decisions that are being made in our court system, they have generational impact and they have the ability to be very destructive. And so that's why it was so important for us to address those bail issues and those bail considerations. But the work I'm doing now as a judge is just a continuation of the work that I started as a director of the Public Defender's Office. When you think about the sentencing decisions that we're making as judges, and when you think about the bail considerations that we're making, those are all the things that we have to change the way in which it's been done historically. We have to continue the work of reforming our courts, and I'm currently doing that work now. The other thing, too, is that, unfortunately, of 44 judges in our Court of Common Pleas, there are only 4 African-American judges, and I happen to be the only judge that's serving in the criminal justice system. So when you think about the fact that there's a racial disparity at every decision point in our criminal justice system, and you think about the fact that people from low-income communities are the ones that typically end up in court, and it continues this narrative and this belief that the process is not fair, we have to increase diversity in our court system. And I believe it's because of those things: my life experience, my work experience, my experience serving as a director of the Public Defender's Office, my work in the social service field, my life experience growing up in a low-income community. I understand the things that bring people, that result in people becoming involved in our court system. And I understand the things that we need to do differently in order to ensure equal access and justice for all. And those are the decisions that I make on a daily basis. I'm highly recommended by the Allegheny County Bar Association, and I humbly ask you for your support and your vote in this upcoming election. I am number 6 on the ballot, and I hope that you'll consider me for your vote. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the video. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so I can bring you more videos on subjects like this and many other topics. Please leave any comments in the comment section. Any questions or comments, I'll get back to them as soon as I possibly can. Thanks a lot for watching. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.